Alright, so here's our opening hand here. This is definitely quite interesting, but with that being said, I haven't even done a proper intro for you guys yet, so welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing some test hands here for cubics. This was obviously something that you guys already saw coming, so without a doubt, there's nothing else. I mean, this is something you guys were already expecting. I mean, after putting out the video yesterday, there was definitely going to be one here today anyway. But yeah, with that being said, we're going to do a couple of test hands going first and second. I am using a proxy for Pot of Extravagance. It is DDD or DD Kepler. So when we actually get to it, just assume it's a Pot of Extravagance. But yeah, with that being said, let's get started. Here's our first opening hand. Looks really nice. We have here already the Cubic Lord, but we have Summoner Monk. Very interesting, of course. We play Summoner Monk. It obviously changes its defense, and you could discard a spell. It's especially summon a level 4 monster from the deck. In this particular case, you could get rid of Mind Control or Typhoon, or MST, sorry. But I don't know, should I get rid of MST? Yeah, I'll get rid of MST. And we're going to go for the Doozer, of course. Doozer's effect will allow us to pretty much just ditch a cubic card from the deck to the graveyard, regardless of how it's summoned. So in this case, we're obviously going to ditch off the Karma. So where is Karma? Over here. And with Karma being ditched, you could obviously banish that. Oh, actually, you know what you could do though? Since this is like your first turn, you just keep the Karma in the graveyard. You know, that's no big deal. Hopefully your opponent doesn't, they don't DD Crow you. That would be a problem. But you know what, it's okay, because either way, you have something like this, not too bad anyway, but you could just go for an XC since it's your first turn. Obviously, in your second turn, you could do a lot better with some other plays as well, but for the time being, this is okay, because you just have like your 2 cards here, and it's like a good starter. So, because it's your first turn, why not just go for the Baguska? And from that, you pretty much can sit for a couple of turns as well, which is quite nice, of course. So, since we already did our search, we also got to shuffle our deck here, and hypothetically, let's actually assume what else would happen in the later game. This deck doesn't really do too well in going first, so let's just see. Like, yeah, we got a Monster Gate. That's pretty nice. If we wanted to, we could obviously continue to sit until all the materials are gone, but on the turn where it has no more materials, then you activate the Monster Gate, tribute this, and you would summon out pretty much another Cubic Doozer from your deck. And with that, you would be ditching a lot of cards to the graveyard as well, which would be really amazing, of course. But yeah, this is just going first. Obviously not too eventful, but you could see that with the Baguska, it really helps out with this deck. But that being said, let's move on to the next. Alright, so as you can see, this is definitely very different, of course, because now we get to see the Pot of Extravagance kind of go off here. But you know what? We could actually do that, because look at that, we actually also draw into Called by the Grave. So we activate this, even if your opponent has like an Ash or any card that might stop it, you always got the Called by the Grave at the ready. So you know what, that's okay. But yeah, with Extravagance, you pretty much just get rid of whatever 6 cards you want from your extra deck. It doesn't really matter, because like I said, the extra deck doesn't really concern itself, and you get 2 cards here. And look at that, right off the bat, we've improved our situation, because, well, we got a +1 technically, and we have one of them being Reasoning, and the only card that can be summoned off Reasoning would be Doozer. So your opponent at this point might not know what deck you're playing, so they're probably going to guess level 4 if they don't know. If they do know, they're probably gonna still go for 4 anyway. So we're just gonna keep going. The whole point of Reasoning is really just to get rid of, I guess, the cards from your deck to the graveyard, particularly the spells and traps. So we're gonna keep going. Assume it's a 4. Most people guess a 4 anyway. So look at that, 2 Cubic Waves to the graveyard right away, a Karma to the grave, really nice, and a Summoner Monk. It's most likely they're guessing it correctly, so just assume it's going to the grave. But with that being said, we do have some resources in the grave now. We can't activate them right now since we already used the extravagance, but it's a really good setup because we already have cubic waves in the graveyard and karmas as well. And at this point, you just set the Vijam and you just sit for that turn. You could also obviously set the Cord by the Grave if you haven't already used it. And yeah, this looks pretty good because we could obviously also go for the Monster Reborn in a desperate attempt to bring out Summoner Monk and utilize his effect if we needed to, because we also have these two to discard for the Summoner Monk. But that being said, again, it's more of a setup turn. And yeah, this is definitely something I'd consider to be quite decent for a start. Alright, so here's another opening hand here. Oh, forgot to get rid of the extra deck. At this case, you have quite a few interesting options, because if you go for the extravagance, you can't go for the upstart. If you go for the upstart, you can't go for the extravagance. So it's up to you what you want to do. If you want to, or if you know that your opponent is playing cards like Ash, then go for the upstart and then just force the opponent to negate you, and that's okay. But if you know that your opponent's not going for Ash, then you could actually just go for the extravagance, and that would be okay as well. So let's just go for the extravagance and assume the best case scenario here, that they can't negate. We just use this and we'll get rid of it, and we're going to draw into two cards, Mind Control, Monster Reborn. Not really going to do too much here, so it seems like we're just going to be setting. So we set the Vijam, definitely just keeping us there for a while. MST, really great here of course, and we have a unification as well to set. And what I like about unification is that you could just banish this card from the graveyard and special summon any level 4 low cubic monster from your hand or deck, ignoring any summoning conditions. And the turn you do that, you also get protection from battle and card effects, which is definitely going to be quite nice here. So unification, still an amazing card obviously, but it's just these particular 3 cards here that kind of prepare us for the next turn. So let's hypothetically assume that it's already one turn later and we draw into our next card. Sorry about that. We get 1 day of peace, so we get to actually go for the upstart and 1 day of peace. So again, it's more like stalling than anything, and this is what we get, which is actually pretty good anyway, because the Summoner Monk could still go off and you could ditch one of these cards, either one you want. Go for the Duzar. Duzar would then send your Karma to the grave. Karma would then add some cubic to the hand. You could activate the Dharma, discard whatever that cubic you drew, and get rid of it to the grave. In that case, it could be a cubic wave as well, and you're just setting up resources. And you know, it's the funny thing, you'd assume that this would be an OTK deck, but the OTK happens a bit later on in the mid game. That's what I find to be most common about this deck, but for now it's mostly really good setup. I wouldn't complain about any of these setups so far. But with that being said, let's go on to turn 2 now.